Hello and welcome to Task to Process Mapping for the PMP exam. We're focusing on the Monitoring and Controlling Process Group. It's been a long time coming. It's been extremely busy with the PMBOK Guide 6th edition course that's going to be launched very soon. In fact, if you want to be part of the sneak preview, do send in your name to learningadmin@praizion.com, all one word, learningadmin@praizion.com. Also, if you're looking at getting PMP certified, sign up for our study group, savageonsaturday.com. So let's talk about the Monitoring and Controlling Process Group. To ace monitoring and controlling on the PMP exam, you should be aware of the 7 tasks. You should be able to perform the 7 tasks. The first task is measure project performance using appropriate tools and techniques in order to identify and quantify any variances and corrective actions. So when you break this down, we're talking about measuring project performance across the board, across the different dimensions, measuring project cost performance, measuring project schedule performance, measuring the performance of getting the scope done. So time, cost, scope, and we could even add in quality performance. We can even add in the risk audits that we do as a way of checking how effectively are we managing risks, how effectively are we managing scope, how effectively are we managing our stakeholders' engagement, how effectively are we managing the project team. So all of this information could be summarized by taking a look at the entire gamut of processes. Now bear in mind, in the 5th edition, the resources element does not have a controlling aspect. So we will focus on the 6th edition control resources process when it comes to reporting on how resource usage has been proceeding and how well we have been performing in that regard. Are the resources being used as intended, or have there been any variances? What are we going to do to correct this, not just in resources, but across time or schedule, cost, and scope? So, right here, as you probably guessed, we're talking about the assembly of all of this information into a conclusive work performance report of sorts, and this is an output of monitor and control project work. So, my advice to you is understand monitor and control project work is deep. It's the assembly of various pieces of work performance information that tell the story of how well we are performing across the different domains and across the different knowledge areas. So when it comes to task 1, not only should you think about monitor and control project work, you also need to be thinking about all controlling processes, from scope management all the way down to stakeholder management. In some way, you should also be thinking about the perform integrated change control process, because that could give us an idea of how well we're managing changes when we take a look at the change log. But there's no feedback loop from that back into monitor and control project work. Instead, monitor and control project work feeds perform integrated change control with work performance reports. So I would like your focus to be from scope all down to stakeholders, but do be aware of the interaction between monitor and control project work and other processes where those work performance reports from monitor and control project work actually go. The next task is manage changes to the project by following the change management plan in order to ensure that project goals remain aligned with business needs. I just mentioned perform integrated change control, and this task is focused heavily on perform integrated change control because managing changes to the project involves getting all those change requests and funneling them through the perform integrated change control process. So when we talk about following the change management plan, the plan for how changes will be managed on the project, it is all coordinated via the perform integrated change control process. It's all integrated in this process, hence the term integrated change control. So we're talking about all manner of processes being funneled through the perform integrated change control. If it gives you a change request, that change request needs to be funneled through perform integrated change control. Now, to do extremely well in this particular area, you do need to know the dynamics and the steps in change request approval or rejection. It starts off typically with a request from a key stakeholder, or maybe the customer, maybe an end user, maybe a project team member. A request is made. It could be a verbal request. If it's a verbal request, we need to get it put into a formal change request form. Gets put into a formal change request form, and then it gets logged into a change log. After it gets logged into a change log for record, the project manager and the team can then begin to review the change request. As they review the change request and analyze it for its impact on time, cost, scope, quality, health, safety, whatever it is, they get to a point where they've got an idea of the impact on the project, and then that, along with the change request, is raised with the change control board. The change control board takes the change request and the analysis by the team. Along with their analysis, they arrive at a decision. So they analyze the change request. They may refer to the documentation or the background that the PM has presented based on the meeting with other team members, and they call the shots. Yes, we're going to approve it, or we're going to reject it, or we're going to put it into a pending status, put it on hold. So these dynamics are very important. And after this is done and they get the final verdict of the change request, well, that gets updated in the change log. And the change log gets updated with the approval, rejection, or pending status. Whatever the final disposition is, the change log gets updated. And in the 5th edition, the change log is an explicit output, but in the 6th edition, we find it as a sub-output. But don't let that get lost in the weeds. That's a very important document. So the change log then gets shared with other stakeholders, and other stakeholders are aware of what the final disposition is. Now, if it is an approved change request, it also gets updated with an approved status, and that change request needs to be implemented. That change request, now called an approved change request, gets funneled back into direct and managed project work, gets funneled back into control quality. And then what do we get? We get a revised deliverable from direct and managed project work. That goes to control quality as well, already with the approved change request as one of the inputs, because we're going to do an approved change request review of sorts, which again is buried in the 6th edition. You got to look for it, the approved change request review, as a tool and technique, a sub-tool and technique there. And you have to understand that as you get a revised deliverable, it needs to be checked against the approved change request. And if it passes the test, then you update the change log with information that relates to that. Now, when you think about the PMBOK Guide 6th edition, a lot of the stuff that happened in the 5th edition is really buried. It becomes a little bit hard for you to decipher what is going on in the sub-levels. But the summary is your revised deliverable needs to be checked, and then your change log needs to be updated with information that clarifies that the change request was indeed implemented, and the final deliverable now has those requested changes inherent in it. And that's really the cycle of life. But the key thing, the change log needs to be shared with stakeholders so that they understand what the status of their requests actually are. So this could be quite a long one. Task 2 is a long one, but in several videos that I've put out there on YouTube, you might find me discussing this. In our Savage on Saturdays, we actually spent one weekend, significant amount of time talking about this. So that's that for Task 2. Manage changes to the project by following the change management plan in order to ensure that project goals remain aligned with business needs. If there needs to be a change, put in a change request. It could be corrective action, preventive action, or defect repair. These are very important to understand, and I would highly advise anyone taking the exam to read these up. Corrective action, know the definition. How is that different from preventive action? How is that different from defect repair? Moving on here to our next task, task 3. Verify that project deliverables conform to the quality standards established in the quality management plan by using appropriate tools and techniques to meet project requirements and business needs. So this is twofold. Verify that the deliverables from which process, direct and managed project work, conform to the quality standards established in the quality management plan. How do we do that? By using appropriate tools and techniques. What is the chief tool and technique? It's inspection. So we get all of this information, all of these deliverables, whatever the deliverable looks like. We make sure we put it under the microscope. We make sure we put it through the thorough tests. And we want to make sure that those deliverables are fit for use and that they conform to requirements and that the customer will most likely be satisfied when those deliverables are presented. How do we do that? It needs to be an incremental validation of scope. It needs to be an incremental gauge of stakeholder satisfaction where possible, especially in the world of Agile. Frequent delivery means frequent validation. And for that reason, you need to decide which cycle of life fits your project. But the bottom line here is whether it's fully plan driven or whether it is change driven or agile, we need to make sure that these deliverables are good to go to the customer. That is what task 3 is. This is not the approval by the customer. This is the approval by the internal team creating the deliverable. And for that reason, a major output of the process in question is known as a verified deliverable. That verified deliverable means it has been internally verified and is good to go to the customer. So some of the things that are used here again are inspection and things such as check sheets and checklists to check those quality components into the deliverable. So verify that the project deliverables conforms to the quality standards established in the quality management plan by using appropriate tools and techniques to meet project requirements and business needs. And for that reason, you do need to know all of the common tools and techniques of quality, both those that are explicitly mentioned and illustrated in the PMBOK guide and those that are not. Check sheets, tally sheets, Ishikawas or fishbones or cause and effect, whichever name you prefer. All of these different things should be understood before the exam. Affinity diagrams, matrix diagrams or matrix tables, whatever you call them, flowcharts, all of these different things should be understood for this particular task. It's all about quality here. So we're talking about control quality. We're talking about inspection under the microscope of control quality. And we're also talking about all of these quality tools, Paretos, histograms, and so on. Control charts, what does it mean if we say out of control? All of this stuff needs to be understood for your exam. So the key thing in task 3 is control quality, and under it, inspection and quality tools. Now don't forget there's an interrelationship between verify deliverables and validate scope. Let's move on to task 4. Monitor and assess risk by determining whether exposure has changed and evaluating the effectiveness of response strategies in order to manage the impact of risks and opportunities on the project. So, keyword, monitor and assess. Assess risk. Reassess risk. Risk reassessment. Don't just leave the risks alone. Check up on the risks. Make sure that the risks are exactly where you left them. Make sure that the risks have not changed. And if they have changed, then you need to be updating the probability and impact. You need to be updating, in many instances, the EMV. You need to reanalyze. So risk reassessment is big in risk management. So we want to monitor and assess risks. We want to have a risk reassessment. We want to determine if exposure has changed. We want to reevaluate probability and impact. We want to reevaluate expected monetary value, probability in percent, impact in dollars, whatever that might look like. And we want to evaluate the effectiveness of response strategies. What's that? It's called a risk audit. When you evaluate the effectiveness of how your response strategies panned out, that is a risk audit. Don't mix up a risk audit and a risk reassessment. Why are we doing this? In order to manage the impact of risks and opportunities on the project. We want the project to succeed, and this is all part of our effective risk management. So under this, we have control risks, and the risk audit and risk reassessment are a major focus. Moving beyond this, go into task 5, review the issue log. Update if necessary and determine corrective actions by using appropriate tools and techniques in order to minimize the impact on the project. So, the issue log is a log of issues. It's different from the world of IT and ITIL specifically for those who are familiar with that framework where we discuss issues as being realized risks. Well, that's not the case in the world of the PMI. So in the issue log, we have things like the issue type and who raised the issue, a description of the issue, and the different individuals or stakeholders engaged in the issue, as well as the status of issues. The project manager needs to ensure that these are investigated and resolved, as the PMI put this in the PMBOK guide. And the issue log is created as an output of direct and manage project work in the 6th edition. Now in the 5th edition, this is different. This happens in stakeholder management. But the change does not nullify what exactly this document is. It's a log of misalignments, things that need further discussion and debate and need to be resolved between stakeholders. And this should be monitored all throughout the project. And at the end, we share this with stakeholders, and we see this across the various processes in the stakeholder management knowledge area. We see it in planning, we see it in management, we see it in the monitoring. And I'm talking specifically now about the 6th edition, but again, the issue log is the issue log. In the PMBOK Guide 6th edition, there has been a slight change to the definition of an issue. It's a current condition or situation that may have an impact on the project objectives. So the process in the PMBOK Guide 6th edition, again, direct and manage project work and the planning, the management, and the monitoring of stakeholder engagement. Let's go to task 6. Task 6 states capture, analyze, and manage lessons learned using lessons learned management techniques in order to enable continuous improvement. The bottom line is that all of the processes in monitoring and controlling, especially from scope on to stakeholder management, are used to capture, analyze, and manage lessons learned. At the end of every controlling process, you see organizational process assets updates. And these updates have in them lessons learned that are gleaned from the team all throughout the project. Also, at the end of the project, a final compilation of lessons learned is made, but that happens outside of monitoring and controlling in closed project or phase. For now, we're doing this across the other knowledge areas outside of integration. And when we've got all of those lessons learned, eventually they get compiled into a final lessons learned repository of sorts. Let's move on to task 7, monitor procurement activities according to the procurement plan in order to verify compliance with project objectives. So what does this mean? This is talking specifically about the control procurement process. Now, if you're a stickler for detail, you probably notice procurement plan is used rather loosely. Why not procurement management plan? Well, this is a shadow of things to come on the exam. You may get reference to terms used in the real world like project plan or procurement plan or scope plan. But in reality, it does mean the procurement management plan. So don't be thrown off by the lack of precision in the language. You would have expected the PMI's exam to have more precise language. Don't let it throw you off. So monitor procurement activities by using the procurement management plan to make sure there's compliance with project objectives and make sure people are doing what they said they would. Make sure the subs are doing what they said they would. So this is exclusively in this process, the project manager and the team of the requesting organization are involved in ensuring that the requirements are being met. Whatever we're paying for needs to be delivered at the right time, in the right sequence, exactly as it is documented in the contract. As a result, we have, from control procurement, work performance information, which gives us an idea of how well this process is proceeding. But don't lose sight of the fact that we also have work performance data going into this process. We have work performance data going in. We have work performance information coming out. The data going in will give us an idea of how well things are going when we take a look at the work performance information coming out. Now, in the 6th edition, there has been a major change from the 5th. In the 5th, we would see a particular report going in to control procurement, but not in the 6th. In the 6th, we have work performance data, but a key thing that we can note is the fact that work performance information that comes out of this process gives us an idea of the performance, and that was a change that was made probably for clarity reasons. So if we take a look at the work performance information that is generated from this process of control procurement, we can see that this could contain information about how the seller is performing by comparing deliverables received to what was promised. Also, the technical performance that is being achieved. Are we meeting the technical performance schedule? That could also be a pointer. You said we would be at this functionality by this date, but we're not. What about the cost incurred? Is that following the plan? So the work performance information gleaned from this process control procurement helps the project manager in the requesting organization understand how well this particular process is going. Also in this particular process, we have inspection as one of the tools and techniques, a little bit different from the 5th edition, and we also have audit. But when you take a look at the grander scheme, if a question is going to be crafted on task 7, the bottom line is, do you know where the monitoring of procurement activities happens? Do you know the nuts and bolts of what exactly you're trying to achieve? Do you know what kind of data typically would be analyzed by the requesting organization in this task? And if you're able to answer those questions, you should be doing extremely well in this task. So the processes that I see here are control procurement, monitor and control project work has been an associated process, and also direct and manage project work, also associated. The main reason being we get work performance data from direct and manage project work, and work performance information comes out of control procurement, and goes to the monitor and control project work process. So I hope that helps you frame your studying for the PMBOK Guide 6th edition or even 5th edition, regardless the exam you're going to take. But monitoring and controlling is big. Remember, it has 25% of the exam under it. For that reason, these specific tasks I've called out, hone in on them and close the gaps. Remember, to get a very reliable and effective course, go to Praizion.com and sign up for our online 35 contact hour course or any of our other shorter courses. Thank you for your audience, and bye for now.